For years, or really even for decades, the gun people, as they're sometimes known, the pro-gun activists, the gun fetishists, the National Rifle Association, other groups, they've been warning us. They've been telling us we absolutely need more guns. We need more guns in more places. We need guns everywhere because the government could become tyrannical. It's possible that someone might try to turn the United States into a police state. It could be a president who is a totalitarian nightmare who might do something like deploying the military across the country. And those exact same people have been silent as Donald Trump has said he doesn't care what governors say. He'll send in the military if he wants to suppress protests that are protected by the First Amendment. And in fact, as we saw the National Guard and very militarized police units and riot squads deployed to protests around the country, which have been overwhelmingly peaceful, the NRA and the gun people have said nothing. We saw a riot squad take down Martin Gugino, an unarmed 75-year-old man, knocked over by police, hitting his head, bleeding from his ear, spending nearly a week in the hospital. And the president got involved to attack the protester rather than the police who did this. This is exactly what the NRA and others have been warning us about. And as Matt Cohen writes for Mother Jones, all of those people, all of those groups have been absolutely silent. Wayne LaPierre from the NRA wrote 25 years ago that it's possible that, quote, jackbooted government thugs would get more power to take away our constitutional rights, destroy our property, even injure us, if you can imagine that, if assault weapons were banned, which was the discussion in 1995 when Wayne LaPierre wrote that. We saw during the Barack Obama presidency, the NRA, other gun groups, activists, fear-mongering that Barack Obama, the scary half-black, possibly Muslim foreign guy, was going to come and take everybody's guns. He was going to confiscate all the guns. And it was a true liberal bogeyman. And in reality, Barack Obama presided over one of the largest expansions in gun ownership, a boon for gun sales that we have seen in American history because of that fear-mongering. And now the NRA is silent. The NRA is silent that maybe George Floyd should have had a weapon to defend himself, as they sometimes like to say about people in various sticky situations, as maybe the term is. The NRA completely silent about the repression of protests and police brutality and support and encouragement of that brutality from the president and from many of his Republican colleagues. And yet when state governments were saying, wear a mask 2 months ago, that was supposedly tyrannical repression by the government, which had the gun people out in force at state capitals and on city streets. The reality, of course, is that the NRA and these other groups believe the Second Amendment is fundamentally a defense against liberals. That's really what you need guns for, to defend yourself against liberals and fake liberal bogeymen. The NRA doesn't really care about gun rights or tyranny. They care about selling guns and funneling money to Republicans. And it would be very problematic for the NRA to say at this point, listen, don't we need people to take up guns to protect ourselves from the militarized, tyrannical police and riot gear? It would be terrible for optics if they said that. It would put them at odds with the establishment. It would be seen as encouraging violence. And when they talk about defending the gun rights of law-abiding citizens, the idea in their heads is of a white conservative man. Now, of course, listen, I've been around enough to know they include carefully selected, safe instances of defending the gun rights of soccer moms with a handgun in their purse and, you know, picking out some black folks to hold up as, look, here's some examples. But the silence that we're seeing in light of the recent protests and repression by police surprises nobody who's been paying attention. Remember Philando Castile? Philando Castile was a black man who legally owned a gun, did exactly as instructed by police, was calm, complied, and he was killed without real consequences for the officers involved. Where was the NRA? And after the fact, the NRA came up with this sort of post hoc rationalization from their spokeswoman, Dana Loesch. I don't know if Dana Loesch is still a spokeswoman. She was at the time. And she said, well, the reason we're not coming to the defense of Philando Castile, legal gun owner who did exactly what police asked and was still killed, happened to be black, is he not only had a firearm, he was in possession of a controlled substance at the same time. He had drugs on him, and that's illegal. And that's how the NRA was able to say, whew, we don't have to go out there and defend Philando Castile because he had drugs on him. Ah, right. That must have been what it was. And before I forget, the NRA also exists, I alluded to this before, to funnel dark money to Republicans through political advertising. We saw that in 2016 with the Trump campaign. The NRA helped Trump get elected by funneling shadowy money directly into pro-Trump campaign, online advertising campaigns. Investigations into that were started. They were attempted. They didn't go very far. I think you won't be shocked to hear. So again, back when it was protests because the government wants us to stay home and wear masks when we're out, they brought their guns out. And I was thinking that this is the government tyranny, public health guidelines like mask wearing and holding off on haircuts for the time being. This is the government tyranny. And then now, as we see heavily militarized police forces come out in response to protests about government, right? I mean, when we talk about police using force and killing people, that is government overusing force. The government might become tyrannical. People are missing. They're gone. And in fact, they're criticizing the protesters. So never, ever, ever, ever again, if you ever fell for it to begin with, should you fall for any of these talking points. We need guns because the government might become tyrannical. We always come out in support of people who have been victimized by actors, elements of government and law enforcement. That's not what it's ever been about. It's about selling guns. It's about defending primarily their main constituents, which are conservative white men, with exceptions, of course, and as a funnel conduit for getting money to Republican politicians. That's what they exist for, and they're proving it every single day.